spit dumb talk. I got better things to do than to bump y'all. We want that crucial with that bump, dog. Had my trunk knocking bricks off the block, knock so hard they arrest me for a gun charge. I'm like, what car? You ain't getting far. You see, it's not my job to make you wanna do your thing, and it's not my job to make an actor do a scene. No Vaseline, singers they don't sing. You see they hungry, girls will pop it on IG. I'm on top when I see me, we got a problem, you and me. Everything I do potentially is on the beat, yeah. Royalty, lay down at my feet. Woe is me, you niggas think that you MCs. You got people standing in the crowd looking at TV. I raised her heart rate just by seeing me. She said she want me, B-A-M-N-E. Girl, if you want me, make me something to eat, yeah. By your head if you feeling this. I bet you feel it in your wrist. I got many things, none came from a wish. She shook the tambourine and did me like a fish. I got blessings on blessings, nigga. Treasures on treasure, nigga. Several, nigga. I never tested, nigga. What I'm supposed to do? Keep this here from you. Hold up, let me do my thing. Yeah, get my breathing right. I'ma bust the scene of all these rappers' dreams. Oh, they wanna be king, but niggas don't know what's different between a king and me. I got energy, got a lot of energy. Niggas out here drinking lean for the remedy. I paint a picture, they painting Bentleys, biting flows, they can't get rich with me. Count the change, you peasant. Stick to what you know, like some resin. 2017, 'twas a pleasure. Baby hit my phone tryna measure. Ice cool and I'm next up. Your rap drool, Special Edward. I slowed up, float down, you can catch up. Yeah, bet you won't see me in the desert. I got many different things on my table. Yeah, I wanna take the city over like a game of Fable. That's nerd talk, you know that bird talk. We keep that work stock, that's how the birdies flock. Different avenues. Love one, work two. I keep another after another after another. Rappers in this game for their mothers. Keep it funky.
What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the stream. It's your boy DameSmiff, and this morning we're gonna continue the conversation this week about the children and how everybody needs to understand the investment needed, the, I guess you can say, care and focus needed to grow and raise our young musicians today. So if you like conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button. That way more people can see this video, and also subscribe. That way you can catch my latest streams like this and also other videos that I'm working on. So let me know, chat, how are you guys feeling? What's going on? So like I said, this week is all about the children, and we started off the week talking about toddlers, adolescents, screen time, parenting styles, different lifestyles young musicians may have when they're growing up. Then we went into how schools are actually implementing technology into music education. And then we also explored a bit yesterday on the history of marching band and how music became kind of like a core piece of the public education curriculum, right? And so today we're actually going to have more of a conversation about the musician, right? Less about the landscape, but more about the actual children musician, right? And so what you're going to see here is a conversation from the musicians themselves about their experiences, but we'll also be able to explore a bit of what we learned about their experiences through history, but we can also apply a lot of the changes we've seen many of the adult artists and entertainers go through, and see how these children had to navigate those same experiences while being in the limelight at such a young, vulnerable yet innocent age. So this is Musician Talks with DameSmiff, and we are going to get it popping. Let me know if everything sounds good and everything like that, and let me know how you feeling in the chat. Let's get it.
It's been fun. There's never really been an influencer child star turned into musician adult star. You know what I mean? There's never really been this transition. There's been similar. Never someone that was themselves that's making this boom jump transition to also themselves. You know what I mean? And so
for those of you who don't know, this is the legendary Jojo Siwa. And Jojo Siwa is actually someone I had no clue who she was by the time she became, popular in the industry, simply because I was, probably older and like out of the demographic that her content was targeting. But a lot of what people were talking about her was that she had really, really vibrant, energetic kind of content and energy while performing on stage or on the camera and things like that. But Jojo Siwa has been like super controversial because she takes being an artist with the full body yes, as Miley Cyrus would put it. Like she embodies being an artist beyond what most people would consider you to do professionally, but also what they would be comfortable with doing, which makes her a very interesting case study for today because she's been able to kind of do that. I don't know how it's been done, whether it's like through a signed label or agency or whether her parents help her out or things like that. But it's been very interesting to hear the conversation about her content, artistry, and music and stuff like that because I just don't know anything about it. So Jojo Siwa, born as Joelle Joannie, is an American dancer, singer, actress, and internet personality. She first shot to fame as a child star on the reality TV show Dance Moms, alongside her mother, Jessalyn Siwa, before signing a major talent deal with Nickelodeon that turned her into a multi-million-dollar brand. Remember what we talked about, brands and how you can invest into yourself as musicians, right? And that built around bright colors, high ponytails, and signature oversized hair bows. Okay, well, let's stop here for a second and let's think about how and why this worked to become a multi-million-dollar brand. Little girl dancing and singing, doing colorful things, wearing awesome clothes and like high ponytails and things like that, right? What does that mean, right? Well, what it really means is that they have something that can translate easily into a lifestyle brand for other young women, probably just kids in general. Like the bright colors, you can probably just sell all kinds of t-shirts, no matter the gender. High ponytails can be a cool signature for all kinds of women from all ages. And then oversized hair bows can just go right alongside with her particular branding so people can tie it to her, right? So all of these things are really, really wise things to use as branding, whereas like other people would use the city they grew up in, which is really specific, so it kind of closes the gap. Even like your country sometimes can kind of close the gap on introducing a large demographic of people. A lot of people will use their culture as another thing to kind of like market with and things like that. But again, it creates this, lane for yourself. Whereas using things like, if this is accurate at least, bright colors, high ponytails, and hair bows and hair clips and stuff like that, most little girls can get access to this stuff and then join in, especially if they love the music and the dancing and the singing, right? So in recent years, she has completely shifted her image, right? Pivoting toward adult pop music, reality TV, and a much more mature and often highly discussed public persona. From 2016 to around 2021, Siwa was a massive force in children's entertainment, releasing hit singles like Boomerang and Kid in a Candy Store, selling out arena tours and licensing a massive line of consumer products. In 2024, she underwent a dramatic, edgy visual rebrand to launch her adult music career. Her single, Karma, and the subsequent EP, Guilty Pleasure, sparked intense internet debate, viral TikTok trends, and widespread media coverage, particularly after the boldly and controversial claim she wanted to start a new genre called gay pop. Now that sounds hilarious when you're like reading it or like hearing it, right? But at the same time, you got to think about what she's doing. She's kind of like channeling that artist energy where she just wants to just create amidst no matter what's going on, right? Like gay pop is just not a thing. So it's just like, all right, I'm just going to just say it to separate myself. So what we're really seeing here is that she's kind of trying to shape something. What is that something, right? And this is what I meant early on in this week where I said, you're going to have to start very, very, very early for child musicians to be able to have an identity for themselves, know what they're investing, know what they're getting in, right? And that's when we started talking about Coogan accounts and things like that, right? And so what we're noticing here is that however you feel about her music or her content or what she's doing on TV, she still has to identify with it, right? She's still like removing you guys and how you feel about it. As an artist, you still have to be able to identify to say, I am X, Y, and Z, right? And so for child stars, most times I can see it being difficult to where as you're growing, the things you identify with are also changing and growing. So let's say the bright colors and things like that. She may have been a little girl when they thought of that, but then when she's like an edgy, angsty teenager, she's leaning towards more darker colors, darker tones, maybe browns and blacks and things like that, right? And so the issue that you're going to really run into as an artist is where you're going to need to lean in on your network and honestly your teachers and family to kind of help shape your identity. And that usually happens through life experience, where if you're on camera all the time, it's going to look really messy, right? So it's good to see child stars at least take like some time to train themselves in being a professional instead of it just being their life on camera, right? But even if she does want to do something called gay pop, right? She would be taking what she personally feels to be a real thing, this gay pop genre, and turning it into a product that she now has to monetize and a brand she has to now stand behind. This is why I'm pointing this out. You might not want to do that with something so sentimental as, let's say, your personal sexuality. You might want to do that with more of like just music, right? You might want to remove the adjective there at the beginning, right? So something to think about when you guys are, you know, young musicians and you have like these really identifying, I guess, niches, like these identity centered niches. So just keep that in mind. So continuing on, she made history on Dancing with the Stars in 2021 as part of the show's first ever same-sex dancing duo, placing second. She has since leaned heavily into reality television, including a stint on Celebrity Big Brother. And to kick off 2026, she quietly began transitioning her public persona toward a more authentic chapter, altering her social media handles to her birth name, Jojo Siwa, signaling an ongoing evolution from her childlike moniker. And so you see my point here, whereas like as she changes, the brand changes because she is the brand, right? That is cool, but it's also volatile. It's very risky. It's something that you kind of have to think about, especially as a fan and as an investor, where I can see how a lot of the controversy coming from her career can be that her interests and maybe her trajectory doesn't align with what the fans expect of her. And sometimes even investors, like if you have a record label and you're like, man, I want 4 albums from you, and then by like the 3rd album they're kind of like in a different space, different energy, different vibe, and the album starts sounding differently, I can see how you're like, man, how do we sell this? We don't know what to do. How do we market this, right? So that's pretty interesting. So a lot of what we're going to see when we have these conversations, I want you to consider all of that, like just growing as a child combined with growing as a child musician and then child star, and then also the technological advancements, the world events, the current events. You know, some people's parents are like not as cool and helpful as maybe Lady Gaga's parents and things like that. You know, so you got to consider all of those things and the names that come with what we would call child stars, right? So we're talking about Jojo Siwa now, but imagine all the other musician students that you don't know the names of that are currently playing in shows and gigs and stuff like that. I was at a rehearsal yesterday and I was playing alongside 2 violinists, and they were like first and second like chair of like a national symphony in the state and things like that. Like they're just there chilling, talking with us, like just cool people. So there's a lot of people who would be competitive at this level, but how they get there is what we're going to be getting from their perspective.
That's been an interesting vibe.
Let's talk about the song itself outside of the video. Like, what was the inspiration behind the track?
There's a lot. I think one thing with me is I've been wanting to make music that is pop music, that is, you get to listen to it and you get to decide with it what you will. Of course, I have true stories behind it, as every artist does. I don't hear a song and then just put my voice on it and hope for the best. You know, I take a song that I can relate to, or that I have a story to relate to, or that I know somebody that, you know, related to me. And interestingly enough with Karma, I had a very close person in my life ask me what song I sing and I think about them.
Bold question.
Instantly, my answer, which should not have been Karma, my answer was Karma. That's when I knew that that person wasn't supposed to be in my life anymore, when that was my answer.
I mean, I'm sure you've recorded a lot of other songs. Yes. So why was this the one that you said is going to introduce this new version of you?
You know, the last words that I've sang for the world, essentially my last song, the last words of my last song that I released were "Nobody can change me." That is still true. But Karma, I think, starting off by saying I was a bad girl.
I was a bad girl. I did some bad things.
Was the only right choice. I think that no matter.
Now, when it comes to lyricism, a lot of it can be taken a lot of different ways. We can say this is a personal thing. We can say this is an artistic thing. This is a storytelling thing. There's a lot of things we can say, right? But I just want you to show that there is a controlled understanding that who she changes into matters to the brand, right? Now, whether it's from her own perspective or maybe her team is on the same page with her, or maybe there's like a manager who's helping her, you know, think this through. The point is that it matters a whole lot about who she is, what she's thinking about, as well as the effort she's willing to put into expressing, right? So some people will lean on music. Some people will lean on, let's say, outside of music expressions. You usually see most of these musicians, they'll turn to like signing other artists to try to get like expression of what their ideas and things are. Now they're suddenly philanthropists and things like that. So this is always going to be the interesting perspective, getting it from them.
Matter what I put out first was going to get picked apart, of course. I mean, look, if it wasn't me doing it, I'd probably pick it apart too. It's the nature of the world. But I knew that whatever this first moment was something that I wanted to be as bold and as ballsy as possible. And there is nothing more ballsy than this song. I mean, it is my favorite song that I've done. It truly is.
Well, we gotta talk about the video. I mean, because mind blown, so good. We talked to Richie, your choreography,
Yes, he's the
and like
best.
the moves are so incredible. So talk to me
Yeah.
about why it was important to like have that intense level of dance in this
Yeah, we always have said that dance is kind of my secret weapon. You know, it's in my back pocket. It's something that I can bust out, and I fuck around dance a lot. I jokingly dance on TikTok. I bop around, and people, oh, you're not a dancer. You don't know how to dance. I mean, I did the math the other day, and I'm kind of grossed out by it. I've taken over 20,000 dance classes in my life. Like that's.
Wow, I would have never known. Well, honestly, because I just don't know Jojo Siwa. But the point here is that you see how much work she's put in 20,000 dance classes, right? But what she's also probably embraced is that all of the technicality, all of the formality of dance is not what's really what you guys crave. And that's not really what makes dancing important. Those are just tools, right? Just like how we talk about AI, where the process of making music is very, very, very important to understand, which is why having lessons and going to school and getting the theory and investing in the college and all that stuff is very important for musicians, because we hand you the tool, you can use it a lot better, right? And so for her, dancing is obviously more for expression, but the ability to just do it is what most people use as a hindrance, right? Like if I were to turn a camera onto you and say, all right, dance. And then after you dance, I tell you, okay, we're about to post this online. You know how many of you would freeze up and cringe and start crying and wanting to see the video and edit it and then put words to it and add effects and all this stuff like that? It's very rare that few of you would just turn the camera on and dance, right? And so being comfortable like that, honestly, probably does come from the criticism you get from teachers and lessons all the time, right? So you guys doing it, it's like, well, much of your opinion is really from the audience, right? So we're going to take it with a grain of salt, as in we're going to understand what you're saying. But as far as changing the trajectory of what we're doing here, that's not the case here. So why am I saying that? That's important to understand for an artist, because if she didn't do that, she would be one of those child stars that just are reactive to everything they see online. And there would be no, like I'm explaining here, identity that she would be tethered to, tied to, or holding as like a foundation for what she's doing. So if she likes to dance, she likes to dance. She's invested in the education of dance through clearly all the lessons, so why not use it? But using it as a tool versus a crutch, meaning I can use this and then hear your criticism and still use this to make better improvements.
Disgusting. That's really terrifying.
That's amazing to me.
It's amazing, and it's definitely a flex, but it is awfully disgusting. And so dance, people don't really get to see me dance. They get to see me dance, they get to see me do my little thing, but they don't get to see me dance nowadays. With this, you know, I think that the artists that inspire me, go back to Lady Gaga, is #1 when it comes to being an artist.
And you remember we talked about Lady Gaga, and she, by like most people's standards, would be a child musician. She was 14 playing at live performances and things like that. So she is definitely a great example of somebody who can transition from young to adult in terms of the life experiences being affected.
If you watch her videos back in the day, there was no holding back. There was nothing shy of dance, wardrobe, singing, props, like every aspect of everything. It was always so full out, so full circle, and no holding back. You can always grow, you know what I mean? It's like some people think you gotta kind of reserve your ideas so yeah, we have somewhere to go. Nah, we're going as big as we possibly can, and then, you know, somehow we'll go bigger, but we don't know how, but we'll figure it out eventually.
No, and I'm so obsessed that you're doing that because I feel like that's something that's missing in the industry these days.
Totally.
Like the big pop star, the big music videos, the big performances. How was it to like feel like you incorporated the themes of the song into the video and make it match?
It was actually really fun. This video idea came to me about a year and a half ago. Originally, the only thing that you didn't see that was in the original idea was an element of fire. There was supposed to be a massive element of fire where it was like I kind of burned the boat and then I kind of burned the island and I kind of like ran away because I set it all on fire with my magic fire powers, I don't know. And actually on the video set though is when I told the director, I was like, we gotta kill the fire, it's never gonna work, it's gonna be too much. And thank goodness we did because it would have been too much. That's what would have made it too much.
Wow, I mean, I love how involved you are in this creative process. I think that's
So yeah, I was actually going to point that out as well, that the interviewer was asking. She's very involved in the process, and her making an executive decision like that, I don't know what made it prompted her to think that it was too much, but her thinking that way is actually a good sign of leadership and what we talked about last week, reading the room. She's a very good and smart person when it comes to that kind of executive decision. And so most of what you're going to see with child stars is going to be their ability to navigate that, right? Because you got to think they were introduced to the music industry as kind of like an underdog, right? They were supposed to be led by pretty much everybody up to a point, even up until like teenage years. And so now they're at the point to where they're controlling treatments of music videos, on stage staff, and then of course other artists and employees and things like that. They have to think a different way than just being a, you know, free-spirited artist all the time. And they also have to think of it in a way that's going to make like a lot of what we want to see as a, you know, fan make sense, right? So now we're going to look at another star, and they're a little bit more, I guess you can say, modest in terms of their approach to their career, and we're going to get her perspective on how this works. So we're going to be looking into Emily Bear.
Sorry to make you cringe.
I'm fine with it now because I'm kind of proud of my past. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
Especially now that I feel like I've gotten past the hump. Because I feel like a lot of child prodigies also fizzle out once they become adult because like the spectacle is gone.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left. Like they're just, you know, one of a million again instead of like one of 100. And honestly, with the Bridgerton thing, I feel like I'd gotten past that hump because I was judged purely based off of work that I was doing as an adult. And no one even knew anything I'd done before. And then they found out later. It was like, what? She was the girl I watched on Ellen? And I was like,
that's cool.
This is cool. I love my past. I think it obviously has shaped who I am as a musician and a person.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of it. But like the word prodigy, I'm still like, eh.
So I read about child prodigies to prepare for this interview, okay? And a lot of them said that music flows naturally within. It's an intuitive language that they understand even before they grasp technical aspects of it. Sort of, I kind of compare it to how walking would be for any of us. Like, we have the instinct to want to walk even though we don't know how.
Right.
So I agree with the interviewer that it is kind of innate, but I wouldn't call it like walking. I would treat it more like a language. Right. There is a language that you can speak with any human around the world. We just don't have a word for it. We call it body language, but there isn't like a thing like you speak this, you know what I'm saying? But that's kind of what music is. You can do it with music. You can do it with dance. You can do it kind of with like just your facial expressions and things like that. There's a lot of different ways you can communicate. But let's dive deep a little bit into Emily Bear, because she is also another artist that I've never heard of, but we will learn about today. Emily Bear is a massive talent, essentially a musical shapeshifter who has evolved from a classical jazz piano prodigy into a Grammy and Emmy award-winning composer, songwriter, and producer. That's actually amazing. Born in 2001, Bear was composing music by age 3 and made her professional piano debut just at 5 years old. Legendary producer Quincy Jones took notice of her early on, becoming her mentor and producing her chart-topping original jazz album, Diversity, when she was just 9 years old. He famously called her the completely 360-degree package. That's actually kind of funny. By her teens, she was already playing her own original orchestral and jazz compositions at legendary venues like Carnegie Hall, the Hollywood Bowl, Lincoln Center, and Montreux Jazz Festival. That's actually pretty dope too. While she spent her youth primarily known as a virtuosic pianist, she transitioned heavily into mainstream songwriting and musical theater alongside her writing. Alongside her writing partner, Abigail Barlow. That's what it says. During the pandemic, though, the duo began writing a concept musical based on the Netflix hit Bridgerton, building the songs entirely live in front of millions of viewers on TikTok. Oh, that's pretty crazy. So they basically live streamed their creative process for this brand new project. Bear orchestrated, produced, and co-wrote the music. The project blew up, went to #1 on iTunes pop charts, and won the 2022 Grammy for Best Musical Theater Album. At age 20, Bear became the youngest recipient ever in that category. That's pretty crazy. I wonder how, because if we got to consider the technology that was out at that time, I wonder how streaming that in front of millions on TikTok affected this Grammy award. I wonder how that worked. Then also she worked on Moana 2. Following their theater success, Disney hired Barlow and Bear to write the entire song catalog for the massive animated feature film Moana 2. This historic gig made them the youngest duo and the first ever all-female writing team to write a full soundtrack for a Disney animated movie. Bear's career spans an incredible wide net across pop, jazz, classical, and commercial media scoring. Toured with Beyonce in 2023, where she leaned back into her performance roots and toured the world as a live keyboardist for Beyonce's Renaissance World Tour. She is an active film composer, having written scores for Netflix projects like the Rob Lowe drama Doggone and the holiday film Our Little Secret, as well as winning an Emmy for her score on the PBS documentary Life Centered. So she has pretty much the resume you can't replicate, right? And at a young age. And she's talking about how she can see how other stars, when they start off young as prodigies like that, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, by the time they're 30, it's like, okay, well then I've done everything. I've seen it all. What else is there to do? Or maybe they just aren't valuable to the market anymore, right? And you can see how she stayed within a lot of the trends, whether it was using TikTok, the new technological, advancement at the time, especially during COVID when we were all indoors looking for something to keep us, from going crazy. She also was keeping her doors open as far as what she worked on, movies, films, who she worked with. She worked with Abigail and things like that. So very, very, very diverse and powerful resume. But there is still that kind of like, what should I be doing? What is my identity, right? And I don't know what she ties it to. It could be, being a woman, it could be being a musician, it could be being a female musician. Who knows what it is that ties her to this path so passionately.
Before they grasp technical aspects of it, sort of, I kind of compare it to how walking would be for any of us. Like, we have the instinct to want to walk even though we don't know how.
Right.
Other people have described it as a creative force that they channel. Some describe it as a language, and then some just say it's otherworldly, it's mysterious. They don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah.
How do you think about it? What did it feel like within you?
I mean, obviously, I can't really talk about how it felt as a kid because I don't really remember. I do think it is kind of like a language, but then sometimes it's also weirdly mysterious because even now, I'll look at things that I wrote a couple years ago and I'm like, how the fuck did I don't like, Abigail and I feel the same way too. It's like sometimes we write something and it's flowing and it's like the greatest feeling ever. And then afterwards we're like, how did that happen?
How did it come out of me?
But I use tools just like we do with language and like any skill that we have. It's like I have a toolbox that I can pull from and things that I know work. And the more tools you have, the greater the thing, you know, you can create.
So isn't that something I always tell you guys? It's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool. We've seen it with Jojo Siwa. We've seen it with Michael Jackson. We've seen it with Prince. We've seen it with Ice-T when he was on stage. We've seen it with Lady Gaga. It's a consistent tool every time.
Do you mean tools like inspiration or?
Inspiration, yes, but also like skills. So like I studied a lot and I learned a lot and I tried really hard growing up to always push forward and always learn more because I don't remember who told me this, but it was like a really big mantra for me growing up is that like hard work always exceeds talent. So like whatever natural
James
talent.
Baldwin quote.
Yeah. It's like whatever natural talent I had is only going to last me so long. Like I need to keep learning.
Wow.
Otherwise I'm.
And that's something I tell you guys here all the time is that you have to pursue learning. You can't just be like, all right, I'm done. You got to like be like, okay, I need to find something else to learn.
Just gonna again fizzle out once the spectacle is gone and I won't have anything to show for it afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I think every great composer has a signature. What's the Emily Bear signature?
I think that's a TBD thing. I feel like that's something that you acquire over many, many years of writing. And like once you look at a whole body of work, you can like understand what your signature is. I mean, I feel like personally my signature is that like, I mean, one, I love orchestras, so I'll use that in everything. But it's not really a signature. I just love to make people cry. Like I love that sweeping.
You do?
Well, with music, because if I
like making people cry with my interviews.
Yeah, like if I make someone feel something so strong that they're moved to tears, then I've done my job. I just love like the thing about music that I love so much and that always just keeps me going is like that feeling when you hit like a peak of a song or you hear the strings swell and you just feel something. And you don't know what that feeling, like, I don't know what it is, but like.
So I'll explain what it is. It's actually just the physicality of sound. That's what it is. There's certain vibrations and frequencies that can land on you, on your body, your, physical body, hit your eardrums and things like that. And it'll send signals to your brains. It'll also create different reactions in your body, which is why, like, if you get on like a massage chair or something like that, there's a low setting where you whoa, 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 whoa. Those vibrations travel farther, hit you deeper. Low strings hit you deeper. 808 basses hit you deeper, right? If you think of a cymbal crash, it's very bright and like lightens you up and excites you. That's why on a massage chair, if you wanted to get something like very, very, very surface level, but yet fast, it'll be very fast and loud, things like that. Vibrations is just how it works. It's just air changing shape and moving and creating tones in your head and things like that. You can really experience it if you ever played with like a seashell, a conch shell, if you've whistled, you've blown air through your hand or things like that. A wind instrument really harnesses it and things like that. Flutes, ocarinas, all those kind of things really help you understand how the physicality of sound works, especially through air and things like that.
When I hear the strings play like a beautiful note and it's like that climactic part and you're just like, oh my God, this is a feeling that I can't find anywhere else. That's what I love. And I love epic, lush, beautiful soundscapes. So maybe that's my signature. I don't know. I feel like someone else has to tell me what my signature is. I can't tell.
Do you cry when you compose your own music?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's weird. I never thought about that.
The reason she doesn't cry is like tickling yourself. She's creating the reason to cry. So it's like not real in terms of her. The experience that a fan has is almost like an impromptu, unexpected, unsolicited, just like nudge to this emotion. So like if you can't handle it, then of course you're gonna, submit to it. But if she's the one manufacturing it, it'd be like if I tried to create a joke right now and then actually find it funny, it'd have to hit me for me to like just start seriously laughing.
Yeah, I do think that's probably your signature.
Yeah.
You move people to tears.
I would like to. If I have, again, I've done my job.
So there was this amazing documentary about you when you were 6 years old.
They always believed in me, probably a lot more than I believed in myself. And And so I think that's a very valuable and priceless gift.
Quincy Jones is your mentor. How old were you when you met him, and how old was he?
Oh, I don't know how old he was, but I met him when I was like 8, and then he became a very big part of my life. And now he's 91, so
he was in his 80s.
I think he was not 80 yet. I think he was like late 70s, which is crazy because I remember a couple of years ago I was at his birthday party and we were talking about how he's known me for over half my life, and I'm like, that's weird.
It's unbelievable.
It's weird, yeah.
Because here's the thing. I'm watching this doc. You meet Quincy Jones. He quickly wants to become your mentor, you can tell. He's in his late 70s. You're 8.
Yeah.
And he has 27 Grammys, and he produced your CD. He hadn't produced a solo record since Michael Jackson.
It was wild, man. I mean, I think when I first met him, like I knew who he was and I knew what he had done, but I didn't quite understand, like I didn't grasp
Of course.
it.
Well, yeah, at 9 years old, most people really wouldn't understand most things. But it is interesting how since then he was like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this art. I wonder what you guys think was the determining factor for him to make that decision. Like, what would make him say, okay, this person's got the skill, got the talent, and things like that. My guess is that there was probably a level of work ethic that he probably hadn't had come across his desk that probably didn't rival a Michael Jackson, like they said, because the amount of accomplishments that she pulls off takes a lot of work, a lot of focus, a lot of productivity amidst all the life changes that happens, which is why I explain this as more of a modest approach to being a child star, because whereas Jojo Siwa, more about her personal identity. Throughout this clip, we really don't know much about Emily's personal life, but we do know a lot about Emily's personal life, if you get what I'm saying. So now we're going to consider what we've learned, and we're going to move on to the next clip. And now we're going to look at another artist, but this one is a performer, and he is actually a child prodigy in the sense of performing as an instrumentalist and not so much as a writer or, you know, artist and creator and things like that. So it's a slightly different perspective.
Für mich war immer Musik etwas, was mich aufatmen lässt, etwas, was mir Energie gibt, was mir Freude schenkt. Die Geige war Mittel zum Zweck. Ich war gut da drin. Ich konnte das Instrument relativ schnell erlernen, natürlich auch viel dafür gearbeitet.
So this is David Garrett. This is another musician we're going to learn about together. And he is actually born as David Christian Bongaerts. I hope I said that right. But born in 1980, he is a world-renowned German classical crossover violinist, celebrated for his exceptional technique, virtuosity, and rock star stage presence. He is widely credited with pioneering the modern crossover movement, seamlessly blurring the lines between Mozart and Metallica. So would you think of, let's say, all those like hip hop violinists, the people that want to play like, you know, Kendrick Lamar and things like that, and violinists? He's the prodigy that you should be naming when it comes to that kind of violin playing, right? Born in Aachen, Germany, Garrett first picked up the violin at age 4 after taking an interest in his older brother's instrument. Within a year, he won his first competition. By age 7, he was studying at the Lübeck Conservatoire. At just 10 years old, he made his official orchestral stage debut with the Hamburg Philharmonic. At age 13, Garrett became the youngest artist to ever sign an exclusive contract with the prestigious classical label, Deutsche Grammophon. I think Deutsche Grammophon, I'm going to look that up. Grammophon makes me think of like the word records. We're going to look it up real quick. But that's actually crazy how like already he's already done so much work by like 13 and has gone through just like the whim of doing something. So Deutsche Grammophon is a German classical music record label that was the precursor of the corporation Polygram. Headquartered in Berlin, Friedrichshain, it is now part of the Universal Music Group, UMG, y'all. Shout out to UMG. since its merger with the MCA family of labels in 1999. Dus Grammophon is the world's oldest surviving established record company. Presidents of the company are Frank Breeming, Chairman and CEO, Central Europe of Universal Music Group, and Clemens Trautmann. That's pretty crazy. So, at age 13, he gets an exclusive deal with them, right? As the youngest artist to ever sign with them, right? And the president of Germany gifted him the use of legendary Antonio Stradivari's San Lorenzo violin. So he's getting legendary instruments, legendary gigs, legendary opportunities, all kinds of stuff before he probably, knows how to drive a car. That's crazy. Despite early international success performing the core classical repertoire under legendary conductors like Zubin Mehta, Garrett began to feel constrained by the rigid expectations of the traditional classical world. In his late teens, he made a pivotal decision to step away from his established prodigy path and move to New York City. He enrolled at the Juilliard School, double majoring in violin performance and music composition, studying under the legendary Itzhak Perlman. This period allowed him to fill gaps in his understanding of harmony, counterpoint, and orchestration, ultimately revitalizing his passion for music. So, you remember the story I told you guys about when I auditioned at Berkeley in Boston? Musicians like Garrett here, Mr. David Garrett here, were some of the musicians I would be running into. Where I'm like, let's say, a high schooler who's, learning an instrument within the past 3 years. I'm talking to somebody who's been a master at something of, I don't know, for like 8, right? And so this is the level of competition. That's when it was like, oh, it's a light bulb moment for me when I explained that story, because it kind of shows you the competition you're next to, like how much work you're really into. And what really separated me, which kind of what he probably found problem with, was that if you do what's on paper, if you do what's right, you'll basically wind up in the pool of people who did what's right. So you have to carve out something that's going to separate yourself in order to be competitive. For me, it was ownership and branding, because I couldn't outplay every 9-year-old that was already better by the age of 7, right? So if I wanted to be good at an instrument, that was like bare bones compared to owning a catalog, owning a brand, and actually outworking everybody else, right? Whereas somebody like him, he's on the other side of that spectrum, where he may have a Coogan account and all these deals and money coming in, but he's not 18 yet. So he can't control and leverage everything like he really, really wants to, which is probably why in his teens, he started to see the constraints. He's looking at these 30, 40, 50-year-old, 60, 70-year-old musicians function freely, investing in themselves, making power moves and decisions for themselves, but he can't do it. And so there comes a point where he's like, okay, I need to make a decision. So Garrett's time in New York exposed him to diverse music styles, probably hip hop, rock, pop music, all kinds of things, inspiring him to bring a new high energy aesthetic to violin. His performances combine impeccable elite level classical technique with the raw stadium filling production of rock and pop music. He is famous for arranging complex, energetic covers of iconic tracks by artists like Queen, Nirvana, Led Zeppelin, Prince, Michael Jackson, right alongside traditional showpieces like Paganini and Tchaikovsky. His intense virtuosic playing style earned him the nickname the Devil's Violinist, a title reinforced when he starred as the legendary violinist Niccolò Paganini in the 2013 biographical film The Devil's Violinist, for which he also composed the score. So that he's also starring in movies he's composing the score for. So dude is a beast. He's a humble beast, okay? Garrett has released over 15 studio albums spanning classical and crossover genres, selling over 5 million albums and generating billions of streams worldwide. Okay, I gotta point this out too. The millions of albums sold and billions of streams worldwide, how much money do you guys think that's worth? Okay, answer that question in the chat, but then I also want you to notice this too. 5 million albums sold, generating billions of streams worldwide, making crossover violin music. Can you see how he used his talent to make 15 albums that sold 5 million times, right? Playing an instrument by utilizing the collaboration of the things he's interested in, right? That's very hard to do for you rappers out there who want to identify with like a state or a color of a gang or a place and things like that. It's very hard for you to do with you singers that want to tie your brand to, let's say, R&B and breakups and, you know, sadness and things like that. It's very hard to do. So what he found, at least from what I'm observing here, is the ability to play so well that he can be anywhere. Like if you can sing anything anywhere, you're going to be like the Lady Gagas of the world. If you can play pretty much anywhere, you're going to be the David Garretts of the world. But if you are really good at one thing, like rapping, then we can't really put you anywhere, right? So the key thing you want to understand here as an artist is you want to be able to, at least in this example, transcend genre as a brand, transcend genre as an artist, because you can then do what you want, right? Now, let's say if you do just want to lock down and be the hardest reggaeton artist ever, you just daddy yanking it down, the same beat since '87, right? Well, that's fine, but that's all you'll get. That's all you'll get. So he has a lot of key albums. Like you said, the violin is his main instrument, but we're going to get into his perspective here on how he feels about his career. So a lot of what you're seeing here, and it's something that you can only really pull off with a lot of understanding. He's playing cover songs, and the reason it works so well is because people can sing along with them, and usually you pick songs that are working and popular and things like that, which encourage people to replay the songs and get more streams and like that. So that's the business model. The thing that makes this very, very complex and skillful and unique to him is that depending on the songs he chooses and depending on the level of perfectionism he wishes to employ, he's going to have a lot of work ahead of him as far as keeping up with trends, keeping up with skills and tools needed to pull off all of these different new and popular songs that happen, right? Because if a new song comes out and we really want to hear him play it, he has to go learn it, right? He can't just stick to something like jazz standards, or when it comes to hip hop, that one legendary track you did in '83. We can't do that anymore. So for him, he has to constantly be pursuing, keeping sharp. I'm sure he's probably had some like injuries and things like that he's had to deal with. So it's a lot.
Es macht deine Erwartung, dein Anspruch, deine Suche, deine Hartnäckigkeit, dein Selbstzweifel, dass du nicht gut genug bist. Das macht dich im Endeffekt, oder das forciert dich, besser zu werden als viele andere, die das Selbstbewusstsein haben, ich bin gut, ich muss nicht noch lernen, ich muss nicht noch üben, ich muss nicht noch Komposition studieren. Dieses ewige, ich bin noch nicht gut genug, das ist der Motor eines großen Musikers oder eines großen Künstlers. Diesen habe ich immer noch.
So he was saying, basically in a nutshell, that you have to have this internal drive, this passion, this yearning for being an excellent artist. And you also have to have this kind of like self-doubt that humbles you enough to say, I need to continue learning and improving. Now, pointing that out and you guys hearing it, you guys are like, yeah, that sounds, musicians and making sets, that all works, right? Now I want you to apply it. That's why this next scene, this image right here is very poignant. When y'all look at, even like myself, but if you look at any artist you see out here, you do not notice this child. A lot of you kind of overstep the child part because this part right here is the part that usually the children struggle with. So imagine being 6 and you have to be excellent. Imagine being 13 and you're signed to one of the oldest record labels and you have to uphold an exclusive deal, right? So when he's talking about this level of perfectionism and self-doubt, this is almost starting to look like Whiplash, the movie, where it starts to affect your lifestyle, right? And it did for him positively because he embraced it. But I just want you to imagine all the children in the world who attempt this that we don't notice. This is one man, Mr. David Garrett. There were a lot of children attempting the same thing, a lot of parents pushing children to do the same thing. So when we talk about investing in young artists and investing in children, just understand this is the intangible thing that you have to be able to measure as a parent and as an investor and even as a fan to understand whether or not that you're looking at a great artist, right? So somebody like me, you have to look at this and say, I believe what they believe of themselves in order to truly trust that artist. Otherwise, you can find yourself barely listening to their music. You can find yourself, nudging their music to the side. You don't wear their merch and then like nudge people to join you. It's not, again, this full body yes Miley Cyrus talks about starts with the fans. It starts with investors, but it definitely has to be within the artist for any of this to be successful. And so as we look at these different musicians that we may or may not have heard of, it stands true for all of us all the way through.
Ich würde sagen, mein Umfeld war ambitioniert, sehr ambitioniert und fordernd. Sie haben was gesehen, sie haben das Talent gesehen, sie haben die Veranlagung gesehen, sie haben auch die Entwicklung mit einbezogen, die Schnelligkeit meiner Entwicklung und haben das umso mehr gefordert. Je schneller ich mich weiterentwickelt habe, umso mehr haben sie es gefordert.
So he was saying the people around him, right? And this is why it's important to understand formal education, even as a hip hop rapper, pop star, busking guitar dude, country singer, banjo playing, bottle whistler. You still need to understand formal education because there's a demand placed upon you as a student, right? Now, I want you to look at this image next. Do you see all of the musicians in the room, right? Do you see all of the musicians as equal? And I want you to answer really why you do or don't, because that's the part that many of these children are going to have to navigate, is that when you're looking at a prodigy and you're not the prodigy, that should tell you something, right? When you're looking at people who aren't prodigies and you are the prodigy, that should tell you something. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because he told us, Mr. David Garrett here said, the people around him were very ambitious and they were able to notice his talent and his ability to learn quickly, but they encouraged it. So that's the key thing that he noticed, at least in hindsight, about this, right? So now imagine you're in an orchestra, 13 years old, 15, 16 years old, and you're playing very well, and you have the demand of teachers, demand of family, demand of girlfriend, demand of boyfriend, whatever it is, demand of classmates. And it all can affect you positively or negatively. You may embrace it or you may get crumpled by the pressure. So when we're talking about investing in young musicians as fans, what do you guys really expect of them? And then, of course, as investors, which would be like the parents, record labels, and teachers and things like that, what are we really expecting of them? And why did Mr. David Garrett thrive, you know?
Hat sich das für dich in deiner Kindheit als Bürde angefühlt?
So they were explaining how his environment truly looked from his perspective. And he was saying how his father played a huge role in a lot of what he was doing. And we seen that in the video when he was playing at 4 years old. What they were explaining to us, though, was that his studio recording sessions, his lessons and things like that took priority. Now, again, as you know, fans, we sit here and we go, oh man, yeah, that makes sense. It's dope. Yeah, his daddy put him in school. He kept him busy and all that stuff. But how many of you remember crying because you just wanted to go play basketball or you just wanted to chill? How many of you do that today as adults? Like I'm into fitness and I tell people, you know, you got to do neat activities and keep yourself active and track your food. And how many times do you think they tell me they would prefer to not, or would just chill, or actually like find some kind of shortcut to barely do half the work, right? So when he had a father who was like, no, you're going to commit to giving 100% at 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and then training him all the way through to adulthood, like they said, it is a high cost for a child, because most of what we would like to have is a bunch of freedom and relaxation and things like that, and not so much structured lifestyle and rigid demands. But this is what I wanted to highlight by saying that. What do we expect of our child stars? Similar to like when we think of politicians, we get kind of upset that politicians don't know so much, aren't really like aware of the public common sense, or don't agree with our sentiments a lot of times. But then when you look into their upbringing, they lived completely differently than us, right? So then we got to think, well, if we were raising somebody to be of a certain position or live a certain representation of something, well, what should we expect of them, right? We remove it from musicians and politicians. If you had a young man and you wanted to raise a young man, what expectations do you have of a young man? And so figuring that out for parents is usually easy, but then applying it is the hard part, because you could imagine some dad who noticed his kid was good at violin and probably went to music and arts and bought or rented a violin. But then when the kid started to have to go to lessons 6 times a week at an inopportune 5:30 p.m., then suddenly the decisions of that father start to change, and the priority of those lessons start to change, and this idea of you being a young prodigy start to change, right? So on one hand, we can say, man, your dad was probably like very, very overbearing and super involved. But on another hand, it was probably like, man, you probably are blessed to have someone that spend that much time to focus on you.
Jeden Tag. Absolut jeden Tag. Kein Kind arbeitet freiwillig die Zeit, die man aufopfern muss, wirklich an die Spitze zu kommen. Da sitzt immer irgendjemand im Hintergrund, entweder die Mutter oder der Vater oder der Lehrer. Aber einer von diesen dreien ist immer da mit einem Pantoffel in der Hand. Sorry, ich hasse das immer, diese Seifenblase zum Platzen zu bringen. Aber einer muss es doch mal sagen.
So I want you to point this out too, because there's always this like weird like understanding about like parenting when it comes to just children in general, but especially with children, that when we speak to them as adults, what it was like parenting that adult when they were a child, right? So he's explaining how he either had a mother, father, or teacher behind him while he was playing or doing his lessons with a slipper in their hand, waiting to, you know, keep him in check or discipline him, in other words, right? And he's laughing about it probably because he's like, it's silly now. But the point here is that, do you see the consistency in the demands of a young child, the authority of a young child, and also the expectations of a young child when they are prodigies, right? A lot of people like to use Michael Jackson and his father's situation. In the recent movie, they made a big stink about him getting his butt whooped a couple times. The thing here is that they're still children. So now we have to really understand when they're 6, 7, or even in his case, 4, what you're truly dealing with when you're asking them and demanding them to do certain things. I always have this conversation with teachers where they're trying to figure out why their class isn't like sufficient in whatever they're trying to teach them for, let's say like that day's lesson for music. And I have to kind of explain to them that they don't really see why it's important. Like, you're not really translating to them the purpose of standing at attention in a marching band. You're not really translating the purpose of being in tune together as an orchestra or as a band. You're telling them to do it. You're explaining the reason. You're giving them the definition, but they don't really value it. They don't understand it to say, okay, I get why you're so passionate about it and I want to be as well, right? And this is something that for parents, it usually we fall to the, traditional teaching things, right? But for them, they were kind of immersing their child in the world of music, so much so to where he wasn't able to be distracted. And that basically accelerated his ability to understand music past probably all other students and children. Now, why I'm pointing that out? The reason I'm pointing that out is to say there is some kind of correlation between how parents value their children and the outcomes and expectations they place upon their children, right? You can say, okay, we're going to dump a bunch of money into you getting a bunch of instruments, but there has to be an understanding of what you're doing for the child, right? They had to be like, okay, you're going to get good at your instrument, but not just because you're good at the instrument, not just to get in school, not just to get a scholarship. This is who you are. Meaning the good, the bad, the ugly, like everything I love about you, everything I hate about you. We need to nurture this into becoming the adult we wish you to be, right? And so that's why I compared it to, let's say, a politician or a man, because if a politician were to get up in front of you and fail, you would have the slipper in your hand, right? If a father was not doing his duties, you'd have the slipper in your hand, right? But you would want them to be trained. You would want them to know that they're doing wrong, or at least attempt to, not do wrong in the first place, right? And so when we're talking about children, and then you give them the responsibility of exclusive contracts with oldest record labels in Germany, then I can see why the slipper was in hand at that age, right? They're not giving him the grace of being a normal child, of making mistakes and then being okay with the mistakes and being sad and just being okay with being sad. It's like, yes, you are sad, but now we need you to exponentially get better, because again, the parent's expectation was greater than you're just going to be good at an instrument, or, ooh, little Timmy can play violin. There was something greater than themselves that they all kind of pitched their time, their sacrifices. They probably didn't feel good doing a lot of the things they did. It's a weird understanding of what's going on between parenting and child prodigies. Douche gramophone. Now, mind you, at this time too, ideally his parents and legal guardians would have control over all of the assets and leverage he's earning during this time, right? Whether it's gifts, watches, jewelry, of course the money, but then of course the investment into this brand. It has to make sense. It would probably be explained better in his book that he wrote.
Mit Sicherheit war ich ein Außenseiter. Ich war in einem Beruf, der ein Erwachsenenberuf ist. Es ist kein Kindheitsberuf. Es wäre es ja offiziell auch Kinderarbeit, das kann man ja nicht sagen. Aber natürlich ist man dann von Erwachsenen umgeben. Die Plattenfirma sind Gespräche mit Erwachsenen, man war ja 13, ne? Die Gespräche mit Intendanten, mit Dirigenten, mit Lehrern, nach dem Konzert mit Mäzenen, mit Menschen, die neue Konzerte, Intendanten etc. pp. Das waren alles Erwachsene.
Da war nie irgendwie das Gefühl, jetzt ausbrechen zu wollen.
Wovon? Ich wusste ja nicht mal, dass ich irgendwo drin bin, wo man ausbrechen kann.
So he's explaining how when he was young at 13, he was having conversations with executives, directors, all kinds of people, very powerful people in the music industry at 13. Now, this is important to understand, because remember, when we looked at Finesse 2 times, he didn't really understand the contract, right? So imagine being 13 as a virtuoso and you're doing all of, like he says, work. It's work being a musician. Like your body's at work, your mind is at work. You're spending time that you could be doing being a weird little kid doing little weird kid stuff, right? But instead you're playing in orchestras and recording in the studio and stuff like that. And honestly, with all the albums that we've seen him make and all of the work that he was doing, they're leveraging his labor in order to create products. And that's why he was calling it child labor, but you can't really say that, you know? So what you're seeing here is a weird situation where you have the parents developing a child into an adult lifestyle, that of which they ideally would benefit from, but there also are companies and executives that are taking advantage of this as well, good or bad, depending on however you want to look at it. But everybody here is utilizing the skills of this person, and they're still under 18. They still can't legally leverage all of this throughout, you know, the immediate moment. So when we talked about Emily Bear and how she was saying, well, after it's all done, the sparkle is gone. Why would you then take the money you earned and reinvest it back into your music career? If you've done everything, if you've experienced everything, you've talked to all the people, you got all the network phone numbers, why not just do something else, right? Why not just be tired of it and retire earlier than most people, right? So for him, he had to kind of push through all of that. And I'm pointing that out to say that, yes, this is something most people be like, yeah, again, the artist, I love this. This makes sense. But you got to remember at the end of that, he said, I really had no other comparison. No other comparison. It'd have been like let's say if he went to prison for some, I don't know, a DUI, and DUIs gave you like 10 years in prison. That would be his only other comparison. If he decided to, when he went to New York, instead of moving to New York, he went to Alabama and became a ranch hand. It would have been his only other comparison. So now that he's isolated, now that he spent so much time and dedication into doing this thing, he kind of has no other way to look at this situation other than it being home and comfortable, which makes it, like I said before, easier for record labels and executives to kind of mold you into what they want until he gets older.
Das waren alles Erwachsene.
Da war nie irgendwie das Gefühl, jetzt ausbrechen zu wollen.
Wovon? Ich wusste ja nicht mal, dass ich irgendwo drin bin, wo man ausbrechen kann. Ich hatte keinen Vergleich. Ich will es jetzt nicht übertreiben, aber wenn du in einer Schuhbox aufwächst und du niemanden kennst außerhalb der Schuhbox, ist die Schuhbox die Welt. Er hat da sehr viel Wert drauf gelegt, dass ich sehr schnell verstehe, was er nicht gut fand. Und dementsprechend hat er das Konzert halt immer direkt aufgenommen. Auf der Autofahrt nach Hause haben wir uns das angehört, wie die Lautsprecher. Und hat natürlich dann auch schon direkt die Kritikpunkte geäußert. Mein Vater war schon in der Hinsicht mehr Lehrer als Papa. Das hat er aber auch so akzeptiert und das war für ihn sicherlich auch nicht.
That's interesting. So his father, at a young age for him, recorded the performances for him. And on the car ride home, they would listen to them. And then he would criticize the music. Not in the sense of trying to chastise his son, but more so to be like, you may need to tune this up. We got to work on this and work on that. And he's saying right now, Mr. David Garrett is saying that he became more of a teacher than a father at that moment, where he probably as a kid wanted him to say, good job, David, you did really well. I love you. But his father accepted the role that you need a teacher right now. You don't need a father. And as he's saying, it certainly was not easy for his dad to accept that. Because you now have to look at your child yearn for something that you know they deserve, which is praise and congratulations, but you now have to shift that energy into something that's going to develop into what we see today, Mr. David Garrett, the classical music virtuoso, right? And just think of that whenever I'm considering this, or when you're considering this conversation, because as fans, we look at these artists and these young musicians and just kind of have those moments where we just give them what they want. But then when we think about the criticism, we also don't place the criticism with good intent sometimes. We chastise them with almost no consideration of how they feel.
Leicht, das so zu akzeptieren. Ich glaube, er wäre auch lieber Papa gewesen, aber er hat ein Stück weit einfach unglaublich daran geglaubt und ein Stück weit recht behalten. Hat funktioniert.
He says the insistence worked though. So he's at least there with that. He at least feels a little bit happy that it all worked out, you know. And a lot of times most artists, they'll just, you know, revel in that with their parents, just to be like, I understand the push and I understand where they were going. But that's actually a great story, and make sure you guys go check out the story of David Garrett. I actually want to learn more about that. But this is Musician Talks with DameSmiff. We're exploring how to help the children, how to make everything bridge the gap between fans, investors, and artists, and as well as technology, money, and music. So what we're really going to be breaking down tomorrow morning at 9, we're going to be breaking down a lot of how you can learn how to become a adult, I guess you can say, musician, bridging the gap between child star and adult musician. So I will see you guys tomorrow, 9 a.m. and make sure you guys